Good evening. I want to talk to you tonight about how Mexborough became a centre for the railway industry, a locomotive depot, freight depot and passenger services, how that evolved and how this nothing really remains of this once mighty motive power depot, except there's just a few remnants of brickwork around and some reinforced concrete block. There's little evidence on site of what was once here. The area is now occupied by Swinton Meadows Industrial Estate, and a wide range of workplaces and industries occupy that site. We'll talk about that a little bit later. There's no way I will cover the whole of the complexities of Mexborough's railway heritage in the short time that we have available. So I'll just skirt over it, maybe pick out some highlights. And the railways are a very specialist subject, so this is more for the sort of general local heritage interest, really. To recap, in 1840, the North Midland Railway reached Swinton. It was the Derby to Leeds Railway, and the engineer was George Stephenson. Maybe more about him later. So in 1840 we've got the connection through South Yorkshire, missing the city of Sheffield, but it bypassed Sheffield, but it certainly reached through Swinton going northwards. So we'll move forward in time, and then round about the late 1840s there was certainly a need for a coal railway to move the coal from South Yorkshire to further afield. And the South Yorkshire Coal Railway was mooted to actually meet that need, meet that trade. The chairman of the company was actually Earl Fitzwilliam, and he recognised that he wanted to get his coal away from, for example, like Elsica Colliery, which he owned. So passenger consideration was very secondary, really. This was about shifting the minerals. We had the canals, we had some canal infrastructure, but the speed of the railways was faster, and the bulk loads that the railways could move certainly was more desirable, because we're in the age of the railway mania, and South Yorkshire looked like it was missing out. So South Yorkshire Railway reached Mexborough 1849, and lots of infrastructure was put in place then, including remarkably a workshop that actually built locomotives. And I'm going to show you a photograph here. This is a South Yorkshire railway locomotive which was actually built in their works called the Plant in Mexborough, just off Whiteley Road. At that time, Mexborough, the Roman Terrace area of Mexborough was actually part of Swinton urban district. And it remained part of Swinton until the 1930s, when local government boundaries were changed. It became part of Mexborough. Interestingly, that area is still part of Swinton's ecclesiastical parish. But this locomotive here was one of two built for the South Yorkshire Railway by local people in this area, right from scratch. There was a public house on that area of Mexborough called the Plant Hotel. It's not there now anymore. It's a shop, but the Plant Hotel was called after the railway plant. So that locomotive and its sister locomotive served in traffic until 1893. Now, I've got a rather splendid little book here called the South Yorkshire Railway. It's quite an old book, but this does actually show a photograph of the works just near Whiteley Road, where the locos were built. This is in later years, and it became a wagon building work. So you can see the lines going into the workshops. Long gone now, but it became Burnett's wagon repairers, and actually on Swinton's town badge there is a set of railway wheels which indicates the railway building that continued then. Again, we're going to jump forward in time, and then a new railway came along called the MSNL, the Manchester, Sheffield and Lincolnshire Railway, and the South Yorkshire Railway sort of got absorbed within that. It didn't actually become fully absorbed until 1874, 10 years later. But 1864, Manchester, Sheffield, Lincolnshire Railway started sort of penetrating this area. And sure enough, by 1871, they had created a link from Mexborough through to Sheffield, Victoria. But they did find actually that when that link was created, the existing Mexborough passenger station was in the wrong place. So the current Mexborough station, which is just sort of to my front now, was actually built in 1871 to connect up with the Sheffield Victoria route. If you can think of where the route went through, Swinton Central Station was created, Kilness Central Station was created, and then off it went via Romarsh, into Broughton Lane to Sheffield, via Rotherham Central, and if you think where IKEA is, that's the sort of line that the route followed. So that was the Manchester Sheffield Lincolnshire Railway. In 1899, that became part of the Great Central Railway, and that really helped Mexborough move on as a main loco depot. I'm going to show you some photos now of the Great Central locos, which were based here in Mexborough. So this is, you can just about make out the sort of shed building, quite an old photograph of a small yard locomotive there. This monster of a tank engine was a heavy yard shunting engine. You can see the Great Central lettering on the side of it. And actually a group of railway workers on just hanging off the footplate there, again taken at Mexborough. And a rather super shot there which shows the sort of scale of these look like young engine cleaners, and again with the buildings in the background. And Mexborough had a turntable for turning the engines around. And of course they didn't live in a black and white world. The Great Central Railway's colour scheme was this green and red, so our ancestors didn't live in a black and white world, so you just imagine that that was the colour of the locos. So by the time of the Great Central era, 1899, Mexborough becomes a much more busier locomotive centre. One of the River Don is away to my right, and the River Don actually bounded the site, and the loco depot didn't actually have any road access. It was only like a footpath access or access by rail, of course. But the water in the River Don was extremely polluted, and the quality of water in Mexborough wasn't very particularly good for steam engine boilers. And so in 1913, a large water softening plant was created, which should have certainly improved the situation. So just to orientate, we had the River Don on my right. We're about 300 yards west-southwest of the existing Mexborough passenger train station. Each locomotive depot had what they call a shed code, and that meant a code was on the side of the locomotives so that people knew where they belonged to. And Mexborough's code was 36B. That was the allocated locomotives. So all kinds of work carried on from here, and there's another excellent book which was written by a friend of mine, Mike Brealey, which goes into great detail about the Mexborough Locomotive Depot, and I'm really indebted to Mike for some of the information. But just show you a little plan of the site of where we roughly are. So there's the River Don. We're roughly standing somewhere around here, and you can see the extent of the depot, which sort of cut away right the way back to all, covering the entirety of Swinton Meadows Industrial Estate. So the type of work that came from Mexborough, all kinds of traffic really. There was transporting coal to Wath marshalling yards. Now Mexborough never actually had a coal mine within its boundary, but it was absolutely surrounded by the South Yorkshire coalfield. And Wath marshalling yard really was the concentration yard for sort of many of the full loads and empties of coal. So Wath Main Colliery, the Dale Brown's Glassworks, Elsica Main, Cortonwood, through to Doncaster. There was even a sewage train which serviced trains out of Sheffield City Sewage Works to the Blackburn Meadows and Thriver Tip. The Mitchell's Main Colliery, Garfield Main Colliery, Woolwell Goods Yard, Rockingham Colliery, Birdwell, Pilley, Ecclesfield, the coking plant there, Barrow Colliery, Dovecliff, and there was a number of outstations as well, which was sort of serviced by people who worked at the Mexborough Loco, including of course Wath. Also, I'm interested also in the social history side of things as well. And during the we have here an extract from the Railway Review in 1895. And this shows that there was a ladies section. This is Mrs. Gardner of 17 William Street. She's organising a bazaar. So the ladies had a section for maybe they were their husbands, sons worked at the railways. Going back to the days of the MSNL, we've got the Union branch here, which were they met at Swinton Bridge School, and they were just on a non-stopping northern service just passed us by there. They were complaining about the rules that were being employed by the Manchester, Sheffield and Lincolnshire Railway with regard to eye examination. So they thought they were being somewhat unfair and somewhat harsh, and they certainly wanted to protest against the general injustice and harsh treatment meted out to several men at Mexborough, Barnsley and Frodingham. And in several cases men had been reduced without investigation and without a chance to defend themselves. So there we have some trade union activity looking to defend the interests of the railway staff. Again, on the social history side of things, during the First World War, women were employed as engine cleaners. Now, these are the engine cleaners at Mexborough, and it was the first depot where women were employed, and see quite a large number there of women. Now, normally the route to become an engine driver was you started off right at the very bottom, cleaning the engines and understanding how they worked. You then progressed to be maybe doing some occasional turns as a fireman, and then a fireman would become a past fireman and do occasional driving turns, and eventually he'd enter the ranks of the drivers and then have to work his way up the links. Now, I don't think these ladies would have been able to progress. This was a wartime measure to keep the engines operational, while so many of the railwaymen actually had enlisted in the First World War, including Swinton's Victoria Crosswinner, Thomas Norman Jackson, who was an engine cleaner at Mexborough Loco prior to him enlisting. So we move on in time. There was occasional passenger work, there were fish trains, and Mexborough Station did actually have a fish bay, a fish dock as was called, at the Conisbrough end of the station, if you can imagine that. So the work then went through into the London North Eastern Railway, the LNER, in 1923. The depot's continuing to work. Its primary purpose is providing heavy engines for moving coal. Yes, there were passenger turns. Yes, there was on freight, and there was work in other locations. But its primary purpose was coal. Moving forward, British Railways days, then nationalisation. In the early 1950s, men moved to Wath to operate the electric locomotives on the Manchester, Sheffield, Wath electrification scheme in the early 1950s. In 1961, a lot more personnel moved over to Wath as well. It was a mixed traffic depot. 1964, steam had done, and the depot closed completely, with people transferring again to Worth or into Doncaster or other depots where they'd opted. So in 1965 the depot was officially closed down forever. So we'll just have a look for maybe a few more photographs in the modern era, some colour photographs of the shed, and just how things were. And this is the type of locomotives that you'd see here in colour days. Mexborough town in the background with the British Railways badge on the side there. This is quite a poignant photograph. I know some of these gentlemen, these were some of the last staff to work at the depot. There's the works foreman. This is taken as a bit of a souvenir when they realised that the depot was winding down. As well as the locomotive side, there was a massive amount of infrastructure, signalling, point work, track workers, everything that's needed to keep a railway running. There was 5 signal boxes in the area, and this interior shot is actually inside Mexborough number 3 signal box. And there's the signalman at his frame, and a young man there is called Tony Capstick, who actually started his working life on the railway. We're just about to be passed by a northern set moving towards Swinton. Sadly still in the period of essential travel on public transport, and that's where we have. But good to see the service is still operational. So Swinton Meadows Industrial Estate now occupies the site, and actually one of the factories on there is the New York Bakery, a world famous bagel factory, the largest bagel factory outside of the USA. And we're very lucky to have that in Swinton, and they can turn out up to about 500,000 bagels a day. So a complete transformation from the days of the railway. So Mexborough's a lot to be proud of, and little trace now of the once mighty Mexborough Loco Depot. Thank you.